You open the freezer at the grocery store, and there must be 200 frozen meals staring back at you. Lasagnas, stir-fries, pot pies, little trays of pasta with sauce, bowls that say, protein-packed, or made with real chicken. The boxes look clean, the photos look beautiful, and the price, usually somewhere between $3 and $6, feels reasonable for a meal you can heat up in 4 minutes. So you grab a few, toss them in the cart, and move on. And honestly, for a quick lunch or a night when you just don't feel like cooking, frozen meals can be a perfectly fine choice. Nobody's here to tell you to stop buying them entirely. But here's what deserves your attention. Some of those frozen meals are quietly giving you less food, more sodium, more fillers, and a worse deal per ounce than they did even 2 or 3 years ago. Some of them have shrunk their portions while keeping the price the same or raising it. Some of them use ingredient lists that would surprise you if you actually flipped the box over. And a few of them lean so hard on their brand name or their health claims that the packaging is doing more work than the food inside. Today we're going through 13 frozen meals that look convenient, but really aren't worth what you're paying. We'll talk about what's actually in them, where the value falls apart, and what to reach for instead. If you eat frozen meals even once or twice a week, this one's worth your time. Let's get into it. Number 1. Hungry Man Dinners. This is one of the most recognizable names in the frozen aisle, and it's been around for decades. The boxes are big, the portions look generous, and a lot of people, especially men over 50, grew up eating these and still reach for them out of habit. But let's talk about what you're actually getting. A typical Hungry Man dinner, like the classic fried chicken variety, can pack over 1,000 milligrams of sodium in a single tray. Some varieties push well past 1,200. The USDA's dietary guidelines suggest most adults keep their total daily sodium under 2,300 milligrams, and the American Heart Association recommends an even lower limit of 1,500 for people managing blood pressure. One Hungry Man tray can eat up more than half of that in a single sitting. The calorie counts are high, too, often between 600 and 800 calories per meal, which isn't automatically a problem. But when a big chunk of those calories come from breading, gravy made with modified food starch, and dessert portions loaded with added sugar, you're not getting the kind of fuel your body actually needs. The protein is there, but it's buried under a lot of filler. And then there's the price. A Hungry Man dinner typically runs between $3.50 and $5, depending on the store. For that same money, you could get a frozen chicken breast, a bag of frozen vegetables, and a microwavable rice cup, and end up with a meal that has more protein, less sodium, and food you can actually feel good about eating. Hungry Man sells the idea of a big, hearty dinner. The reality is a sodium-heavy tray with a brownie tucked in the corner. Number 2. Lean Cuisine, specifically the Cafe Steamers line. Lean Cuisine has been marketed toward health-conscious shoppers for years, and the Cafe Steamers line is one of their most popular. The packaging is clean, the calorie counts are printed right on the front, and the meals feel like a responsible choice when you're watching your weight. Here's the concern. Many of these meals contain between 250 and 320 calories. That's not a meal for most adults, that's a snack. If you eat one for lunch and find yourself hungry again 90 minutes later, reaching for crackers or chips or whatever's in the break room, you haven't saved any calories at all. You've just delayed them. The sodium is still a factor too. A Lean Cuisine herb-roasted chicken meal has around 690 milligrams of sodium. That's lower than Hungry Man, sure, but for a portion that small, the sodium-to-food ratio is not great. And the portions have gotten smaller over the years. Some shoppers have noticed that what used to feel like a reasonable lunch now barely covers the bottom of the tray. You're paying around $3 to $4 for what amounts to a few bites of chicken, some vegetables, and a thin sauce. If you're going to eat Lean Cuisine, treat it as a side dish or a snack, not a full meal. And if you're buying it because you think it's a health food, flip it over and read the full nutrition panel. The front of the box tells you the calories, The back tells you the whole story. Number 3. Marie Callender's Pot Pies. These are comfort food in a box, and they sell incredibly well. The crust looks golden on the package. The name feels homemade. And for a lot of families, Marie Callender's pot pies have been a freezer staple for years. But a single chicken pot pie from Marie Callender's, the full-size version, contains around 1,040 calories and over 1,700 milligrams of sodium. That is an enormous amount of sodium for one meal. The saturated fat content is high too, often over 40% of the daily recommended value. The crust, which is the main appeal, is made with palm oil and enriched flour, and it accounts for a large share of the calories without adding much nutritional value. The smaller pot pies are a little more reasonable, but even those tend to run over 700 milligrams of sodium and 500 calories. And the price has crept up. A full-size Marie Callender's pot pie can cost over $4 at most grocery stores, and closer to $5 at some. For that price, you can buy a rotisserie chicken and make your own pot pie filling with frozen vegetables and a store-bought crust, and you'll get 3 or 4 servings out of it instead of 1. Marie Callender's pot pies taste good. That's not the question. The question is whether the nutrition and the value match the price, and for a lot of shoppers, the answer is no. Number 4. Stouffer's Lasagna with meat and sauce, the family size. Stouffer's is one of the most trusted frozen food brands in America. The family-size lasagna is practically an institution. It shows up at potlucks, family dinners, and weeknight meals when nobody wants to cook. And it does taste like a real lasagna, which is part of why it sells so well. But look at the serving size on the label. Stouffer's lists the family-size lasagna as having about 6 servings. Each serving has around 850 milligrams of sodium and 300 to 370 calories, depending on the variety. That sounds manageable until you realize that almost nobody eats 1/6 of a lasagna tray. Most people eat a quarter or a third of it, which pushes the sodium well over 1,000 milligrams and the calories past 500 or 600. The ingredient list includes things like modified cornstarch, soybean oil, and natural flavors, which is a broad term that can cover a lot of different additives. The cheese blend is a mix of part-skim mozzarella and other processed cheese ingredients. It's not bad, but it's not the simple lasagna the branding suggests. And the price has gone up. A family-size Stouffer's lasagna now runs between $8 and $12 depending on the store. For that same money, you can buy a box of lasagna noodles, a jar of marinara, a pound of ground beef or turkey, and a tub of ricotta, and make a homemade version that feeds more people with better ingredients. Stouffer's is fine in a pinch, but calling it a value is a stretch. Number 5. Banquet Mega Bowls. Banquet has always been the budget brand of the frozen aisle. Their basic dinners cost around $1.50, sometimes less, and for people on a tight budget, that matters. But the Mega Bowls line is a step up in price, usually around $3, and it promises a bigger, more satisfying meal. The problem is what's filling that bowl. A Banquet Mega Bowl, like the country fried chicken variety, can contain over 1,300 milligrams of sodium and 600 to 700 calories. The protein content is modest for the portion size, and the ingredient list reads like a chemistry textbook. You'll find things like mechanically separated chicken, sodium phosphate, and autolyzed yeast extract, which is essentially a flavor enhancer similar to MSG. Mechanically separated chicken is a paste-like product made by forcing bones with attached meat through a sieve under high pressure. The USDA allows it in processed foods, and it has to be labeled, but most people don't realize that's what they're eating when the box says chicken. For $3, you can buy a can of quality chicken breast, a bag of frozen mixed vegetables, and a packet of instant rice, and put together a bowl that has real chicken, real vegetables, and less sodium. Banquet Mega Bowls are cheap, but cheap and worth it are two different things. If you're still with me, good, because the next few entries are where things get interesting. Some of these meals have better reputations, which actually makes the concerns easier to miss. Number 6. Devour frozen meals. Devour came onto the market with aggressive branding. The commercials were bold, the packaging was dark and edgy, and the whole pitch was that these were frozen meals for people who actually want flavor. They positioned themselves as the opposite of diet food, and for a while, it worked. But Devour meals tend to be extremely high in sodium and saturated fat. The white cheddar mac and cheese with bacon, for example, has over 1,100 milligrams of sodium and around 17 grams of saturated fat, which is over 80% of the daily recommended limit in one meal. The portion sizes are decent, but the nutritional profile is heavy even by frozen meal standards. The price is usually around $4 to $5 per meal, which puts it in the same range as brands that offer better ingredients. And while Devour doesn't pretend to be health food, the sheer sodium and fat load makes it a poor regular choice for anyone watching their heart health, cholesterol, or blood pressure. As an occasional indulgence, fine. As a weekly lunch, think twice. Number 7. Smart Ones by Weight Watchers. Smart Ones has been a go-to for dieters for years. The Weight Watchers branding carries a lot of trust, especially among women over 40 who've used the program. The meals are low in calories, the points are printed right on the box, and they feel like a safe, structured choice. But like Lean Cuisine, many Smart Ones meals are simply too small to function as a real meal. A lot of them land between 200 and 280 calories. That's not enough to keep most adults satisfied until their next meal, and the result is often snacking that undoes whatever calorie savings the frozen meal provided. The sodium is also worth watching. Some Smart Ones meals contain 600 to 800 milligrams of sodium in a portion that barely fills a small plate. And the ingredient lists, while not the worst in the freezer aisle, still include things like maltodextrin, modified food starch, and various gums used as thickeners. If you're following the Weight Watchers program and these meals fit your plan, that's your call. But if you're buying them because you assume they're a healthy choice, take a closer look. A small portion with moderate sodium and a long ingredient list is not automatically a good deal just because the calorie count is low. Number 8. El Monterey Frozen Burritos. These are everywhere. Walmart, Dollar Tree, gas stations, convenience stores. El Monterey is one of the top-selling frozen Mexican food brands in the country, and their burritos are a staple for quick meals and after-school snacks. But El Monterey has had real quality control issues. In 2019, Ruiz Food Products, the company behind El Monterey, recalled over 55,000 pounds of frozen breakfast burritos because they may have contained pieces of plastic. That's a verified USDA recall, not a rumor. And while recalls can happen to any food company, it's worth knowing the history of what you're buying. Beyond that, the nutritional profile of most El Monterey burritos is not great. A single beef and bean burrito has around 300 calories, which sounds fine, but it also has over 800 milligrams of sodium and a fair amount of saturated fat. The beef is listed as beef on the label, but it's mixed with textured vegetable protein and various fillers. The tortilla is made with hydrogenated oils in some varieties, which is a source of trans fats, though the amounts may be small enough to be listed as 0 on the label due to FDA rounding rules. For $1 or $2, you can buy a pack of whole wheat tortillas, a can of refried beans, and some shredded cheese, and make your own burritos that are cheaper per serving and have ingredients you can actually identify. El Monterey is convenient, but convenience has a cost. Quick pause here. I'd like to hear from you. If you eat frozen meals regularly, drop a comment and tell me which brand you've been buying the longest. I'm genuinely curious which ones people are most loyal to and whether any of the meals on this list surprised you. Your comments also help other viewers figure out what to watch for. All right, let's keep going. Number 9. Boston Market Frozen Meals. Boston Market built its reputation on rotisserie chicken and home-style sides. The restaurants have been closing locations for years, and the brand has leaned more heavily into its frozen meal line to stay relevant. You'll find them at most major grocery stores, and the packaging plays up the restaurant connection hard. But the frozen meals don't deliver the same experience. The meatloaf, the chicken, the pot pies, they all tend to be heavy on gravy and sauce, which is where a lot of the sodium hides. A Boston Market meatloaf meal can have over 1,100 milligrams of sodium. The mashed potatoes are made from dehydrated potato flakes, not fresh potatoes. The corn is fine, but it's a small portion. The brand is selling nostalgia. If you remember eating at Boston Market in the 90s and you see that familiar logo in the freezer, it triggers a positive association. But the frozen version is a processed tray meal with a restaurant name on it, and the price, usually around $4 to $5, doesn't justify what's inside. You're paying for the memory more than the meal. Number 10. Healthy Choice Power Bowls. This one might surprise some people because Healthy Choice has worked hard to modernize its image. The Power Bowls line features trendy ingredients like quinoa, chickpeas, farro, and various grain blends. The packaging looks premium. The words power and protein are front and center. And to be fair, some of these bowls are better than the average frozen meal. But they're also priced at $4 to $6 per bowl, and the portions are modest. A lot of the protein comes from small amounts of chicken mixed into a grain-heavy base. You might see 20 grams of protein on the front, but when you eat the meal, it feels like mostly grains and sauce with a few pieces of chicken scattered in. The sodium varies by variety, but several Power Bowls contain between 500 and 700 milligrams. That's not terrible, but for a meal that markets itself as a health-forward choice, it's worth noting. And the price per ounce is high compared to making a similar bowl at home with bulk grains, frozen vegetables, and a simple protein. Healthy Choice Power Bowls aren't bad. They're just not the deal they appear to be. If you like the concept, you can build a better version yourself for less money, and you'll get a bigger portion. Number 11. Totino's Party Pizza. This one is a little different because nobody buys Totino's thinking they're getting a gourmet meal. These little rectangular pizzas have been a freezer staple for decades, and they cost about $1.50, sometimes less. For a lot of families, they're a cheap way to feed kids or have a quick snack. But let's look at what $1.50 actually buys you. A Totino's Party Pizza, the pepperoni variety, has around 1,330 milligrams of sodium for the entire pizza. The serving size on the label is listed as half a pizza, but almost everyone eats the whole thing, so you're getting the full sodium load. The crust is made with enriched flour and palm oil. The cheese is described as imitation mozzarella cheese, made with modified food starch and partially hydrogenated soybean oil. That's not cheese. That's a cheese-flavored topping made from oils and starches. The pepperoni contains mechanically separated chicken, along with pork and beef, plus BHA and BHT, which are synthetic preservatives that some consumer health organizations have flagged as worth limiting in your diet. The USDA and FDA currently allow them, but the European Union has placed stricter limits on BHA in food. For $1.50, you're getting a lot of sodium, imitation cheese, processed meat, and synthetic preservatives on a thin crust made with palm oil. It fills you up, sure, but there's almost no nutritional value. If you're feeding this to kids or grandkids regularly, it might be worth swapping in a store-brand frozen pizza that uses real mozzarella and a shorter ingredient list. Aldi and Trader Joe's both carry options in the $2 to $3 range that are meaningfully better. Number 12. Michelina's Frozen Meals. Michelina's is the ultra-budget option. These tiny trays usually cost between $1 and $1.50, and they're marketed as a quick, affordable lunch. You'll find them at Walmart, Dollar Tree, and most discount grocery stores. The problem is the portion size and the ingredient quality. A Michelina's Fettuccine Alfredo, for example, contains around 540 milligrams of sodium in a tray that weighs just 8 ounces. The sauce is made with modified food starch, soybean oil, and whey protein concentrate rather than a traditional cream and cheese base. The pasta is soft and tends to come out mushy from the microwave, and the calorie count, often between 270 and 350 per tray, means this is not a meal, it's barely a snack. If you eat one for lunch, you'll almost certainly be hungry again within an hour or two. So the dollar you saved on the meal gets spent on whatever you eat next. Michelina's serves a purpose for people on extremely tight budgets, and I'm not here to judge anyone's grocery situation. But if you have even a little flexibility, spending an extra dollar or two on a frozen meal with real ingredients and a bigger portion will serve you better. A dollar saved on lunch doesn't help if it leaves you hungry and reaching for more food an hour later. Number 13. Jimmy Dean Breakfast Bowls. Jimmy Dean is a powerhouse brand in the frozen breakfast category. The breakfast bowls, featuring eggs, sausage, cheese, potatoes, and sometimes bacon, are marketed as a hearty way to start your day. The packaging shows a steaming bowl of food that looks like something you'd get at a diner. But a Jimmy Dean Meat Lover's Breakfast Bowl contains over 1,000 milligrams of sodium and around 500 calories. The sausage is heavily processed, with a long ingredient list that includes dextrose, BHT, and various spice extractives. The eggs are listed as egg whites, water, modified cornstarch, xanthan gum, citric acid, and natural flavors, which means they're not simple scrambled eggs. They're a manufactured egg product designed to hold up in a frozen tray. The potatoes are fine and the cheese is real, but the overall sodium load makes this a rough way to start your morning, especially if you're adding toast or juice alongside it. For the same $4 to $5, you can buy a dozen eggs, a pack of turkey sausage, and a bag of frozen hash browns, and make 5 or 6 breakfasts that are fresher, lower in sodium, and more satisfying. Jimmy Dean breakfast bowls are quick, and they taste decent, but they're a processed product wearing a farmhouse costume. If you eat them once in a while, that's one thing. If they're your regular breakfast, your sodium intake is starting the day in a deep hole. All right, that's the list. 13 frozen meals that look convenient, feel familiar, and sit in your cart without raising any alarms, but quietly deliver more sodium, more fillers, smaller portions, or worse value than you probably realized. Now let's talk about what to reach for instead, because the frozen aisle isn't all bad. There are some genuinely solid options if you know where to look. Trader Joe's is one of the best places to find frozen meals with shorter ingredient lists and reasonable sodium levels. Their chicken tikka masala has been a fan favorite for years, and while it's not low in sodium, the ingredient list is cleaner than most competitors, and the portion feels like an actual meal. Their mandarin orange chicken is another strong option. Just watch the sugar content in the sauce and pair it with your own rice and vegetables. At Aldi, the earth-grown plant-based bowls and the Season's Choice vegetable stir-fry kits offer good value with simple ingredients. They're not fancy, but they're honest about what's inside, and the prices are hard to beat. If you shop at Costco or Sam's Club, the Kirkland Signature frozen meals and the Bibigo brand items tend to offer better portions and cleaner ingredients for the price. The Bibigo steamed dumplings, for example, use a short ingredient list with recognizable components, and the per-serving cost is low when you buy the large bag. Saffron Road is a brand you'll find at Whole Foods, Target, and some Kroger locations. Their frozen entrees use halal-certified meats and tend to avoid artificial preservatives. The sodium is moderate, and the ingredient lists are among the shortest in the frozen meal category. They cost a bit more, usually around $5 to $6, but the quality difference is noticeable. Amy's Kitchen is another option worth considering, especially their lower sodium varieties. Amy's has built a reputation on organic ingredients and vegetarian options, and their light in sodium line brings the sodium down to a more reasonable range. They're not cheap, usually $4 to $6, but for a frozen meal with organic ingredients and lower sodium, that's a fair price. And here's a simple alternative that a lot of people overlook. Spend 1 hour on a Sunday making a batch of something simple, like a chicken and rice casserole, a big pot of chili, or a sheet pan of roasted vegetables with sausage. Divide it into single-serving containers and freeze them. You've just made your own frozen meals with ingredients you chose, portions you control, and 0 preservatives. The cost per serving is usually under $2, and it takes less time than you think. Before I wrap up, let me give you a quick checklist you can use the next time you're standing in the frozen aisle. This takes about 30 seconds per box, and it will save you from bringing home meals that aren't worth your money. First, check the sodium. If a single serving has more than 600 milligrams of sodium, that's on the high side. If it's over 800, that's a red flag for a regular meal, especially if you're watching your blood pressure. And always check whether the serving size matches what you'd actually eat. If the box says 2 servings, but you know you're eating the whole thing, double those numbers. Second, look at the protein. A frozen meal that's going to keep you full should have at least 15 grams of protein. If it's under 10, you'll be hungry again fast, and that cheap meal just cost you extra snacking. Third, read the first 5 ingredients. Ingredients are listed by weight, so the first 5 tell you what the meal is mostly made of. If you see modified food starch, soybean oil, or sugar in the top 5, the meal is leaning on cheap fillers. Look for meals where the first few ingredients are actual foods: chicken, vegetables, rice, beans, tomatoes. Fourth, check for imitation ingredients. If the cheese is listed as imitation mozzarella, or the egg is a manufactured egg product, you're not getting real food. You're getting a simulation of food designed to survive freezing and microwaving. That's fine if you know what you're buying, but a lot of people don't realize it. Fifth, compare price per ounce. A meal that costs $3 but weighs 8 ounces is not the same value as a meal that costs $4 but weighs 14 ounces. The bigger meal might actually be the better deal. Don't just look at the sticker price. Look at what you're getting for that price. And sixth, be skeptical of health claims on the front of the box. Words like protein-packed, made with real vegetables, wholesome, and balanced are marketing language. They're not regulated the way you might think. The nutrition facts panel on the back is where the truth lives. The front of the box is an advertisement. The back is the receipt. Here's the bottom line. Frozen meals aren't going anywhere, and they don't have to. They serve a real purpose for busy people, for folks who live alone, for anyone who just needs a quick meal without a lot of cleanup. There's no shame in that. But the frozen aisle rewards people who read labels and punishes people who shop on autopilot. A 2-minute habit of flipping the box, checking the sodium, scanning the ingredients, and comparing the portion size to the price can save you money, protect your health, and help you avoid meals that look good on the outside but don't deliver on the inside. You work hard for your grocery budget. Make sure your frozen meals are working just as hard for you. If this video helped you see the frozen aisle a little differently, go ahead and share it with someone who eats these meals regularly. And if you want more videos like this, ones that help you shop smarter and avoid the stuff that isn't worth your money, subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next one. Take care of yourself out there. I'll see you in the next video.